well over 7 feet tall, and tying that to the descriptions of the Susquehannock of a similar build, and given these remains in the burial mounds have often been described as having light colored eyes and hair, and seeing how many other indigenous groups appeared to venerate the Susquehannock, we can only begin to imagine the implications it would have if the Susquehannock truly did descend from the mound builders. Which leads to 1643. This is when the British Jesuit order formed a massive mission to try to convert the Susquehannock, and if not, then to try to conquer them. As you can imagine, this did not go as planned. The governor of Maryland went as far as to hiring militias, but it was to no avail. The Susquehannock were said to have won nearly every battle that they took part in, capturing multiple British cannons and burning through numerous British settlements. The Susquehannock continued these raids well into the year 1652, when the Mohawk were then armed by the British and sent to destroy the Susquehannock. Again, this aggression was easily repelled, but the Susquehannock then chose to sign the Articles of Peace and Friendship to reestablish trade with the British and to facilitate further accommodations for the Susquehannock. It is around this time that the Susquehannock began to be involved in the construction of early settlements in Maryland for the colonists, again, showing their affinity for architecture. By the year 1660, the Susquehannock are described as, quote, the security of the northern part of the province, end quote. And that comes from official Maryland documents. Those Jesuits, however, really seemed interested in the Susquehannock, and with good reason. In 1671, the Jesuit report lists a raid of 800 Seneca warriors on what they believed to be an unoccupied major Susquehannock settlement on the Chesapeake Bay. When the Seneca arrived to the Susquehannock settlement, they were correct, as nearly no adult male men remained in the village. And yet, the Seneca were met by a conglomerate of 300 Susquehannock, mostly adolescent boys, no older than the age of 14. In the ensuing battle, it is written that the 300 Susquehannock boys not only routed the 800 Seneca warriors, but the 300 Susquehannock boys were also said to have been the same size, if not taller, than the adult Seneca men. Just a little more food for thought in this narrative, as for roughly 200 years of European history in America, the Susquehannock appeared to be unconquerable. That is, until the trickery and rewriting of the narrative. History tells us that this group, the Susquehannock, that was undefeated in major battles until roughly 1671, who ruled over the majority of what became 3 different states. The narrative tells us that by 1675, the Susquehannock were easily defeated by the Iroquois and forced to leave their capital in Pennsylvania to move towards Washington, D.C. Luckily, even in the current narrative, we have modern scholars that are calling malarkey on that one. More likely, it's argued that Charles Calvet, the governor of the Maryland province, promised certain trade amenities and gifts to the Susquehannock, as well as arms and protection, if they moved into his province and built a new colony. We could even take this a step further and see how Washington, D.C. and the surrounding area was largely unoccupied and undeveloped at this time. It was still an unknown. That is, until the Susquehannock moved into the area in 1675, establishing the first trade routes, earthworks, and palisaded forts on the same location that would become the United States capital over 100 years later. Then we have a very strange event. It is largely believed that colonists either orchestrated raids themselves or hired other indigenous groups to conduct raids on newly founded European settlements nearby the new Susquehannock capital in Maryland. The Susquehannock were then quickly blamed for these raids, and a 1,000-man militia was organized to eliminate the Susquehannock from the area. It's almost as if the colonists hired the Susquehannock to clear out Washington, D.C. and the surrounding area, to establish trade routes and settlements, to help construct roads and structures, and then to kick them out of the region before taking it over. But I digress. The siege of the Susquehannock fort was said to have lasted for over 6 weeks. Does it really make sense that a simple earthwork and wood palisaded fort would take 6 weeks to penetrate? Or could it be that the Susquehannock had constructed far more advanced structures than they are given credit for in the current narrative, and these feats of indigenous engineering were deemed to be quite difficult for the Europeans to conquer? We're told the Susquehannock escaped in the middle of the night in early winter, with a large portion of their people giving up their identities and assimilating with the nearby Lenape. An estimated 60 to 90% of the Susquehannock assimilated with other indigenous people during this time, as the governments of both Virginia and Maryland had declared war on them. However, the remaining 10 to 40% of the Susquehannock people returned to the Susquehanna River, to their original homeland in Lancaster, where the Pennsylvania government was willing to give them a sanctuary, a safe home to protect the last of their people, or so they thought.
So the tribe that used to be in the area of Baltimore and Virginia and where the Pentagon and Washington D.C. is the Nacotchtank. I don't know how to say that. It's Algonquin. I'm Iroquoian. Total different language. But I never heard of them. It's crazy how we're this nation's capital, and that's not even the real capital. It's not even the United States. It's the District of Columbia. That's a country down in South America, right? But yeah, that's definitely another video we'll talk about too. But yeah, the tribes that were in those areas, they wiped them out, out those tribes because they wanted where these sacred spots were. A lot of the oldest part of the country is where they went to, where we had already settled and we had camps already. They went where we were already living, which was the oldest part of the country, which was the coast. So that's what they did. They raided our tombs when they came here and they were starving. They even ate mummies too. You hear stories about that. White people eating Egyptian mummies. They ate our dead too. So yeah, just a lot of history here. The Susquehanna are Iroquoian speaking people, and Honondagayas, George Washington, him and his family have a lot of history to do with the Susquehanna. But we got one more video after this one. This will be part 2.